High-priced butter cookies. This is something several friends urged for updates on before. In fact, there are quite a few recipes for this tutorial online. They are all almost the same. The method is really not difficult. Instead, the baking and some small details are the challenging parts. They can easily be overlooked by you. So I made 5 versions all at once. I aim to make it as comprehensive as possible, to help you understand it. This way, you can make even tastier high-priced butter cookies. As for the cookies, where is the original version actually expensive? The cost comes from the fact that it uses a Kyr butter. You can look up the price of this butter. Then you'll definitely ask, can it be successfully made with regular butter? Of course it can. Because at its core, it's still butter, right? There will be a difference in flavor. I think for home baking, you really don't need to worry too much. 140 grams of butter. After cutting, we need to let it sit at room temperature until it softens to a paste-like consistency. You will also need browned butter. The amount of butter for this part is 36 grams. There will be some loss after heating. You can ignore this amount. Keep the heat on medium-low throughout. At first, the butter will slowly melt. Wait until the color deepens. The aroma will start to emerge. It's like the scent of hazelnuts. It's really fragrant, that's the key. Be sure not to cook it until it turns black. Then it will completely lose its aroma. For beginners, I suggest you cook it to this color. The butter that was prepared earlier is already softened. After pressing and mixing evenly, add 82 grams of powdered sugar and 2 grams of sea salt. If you are aiming for a lacy edge here, for a very crispy texture, then you can start mixing the butter in when you add the powdered sugar. Whip it with a whisk. If you are looking for a slightly crispy yet tender texture, then just press and mix like I do. Add 36 grams of egg yolk. This uses the amount of 2 egg yolks. For each egg yolk added, it needs to be whipped into the butter. This allows the yolk to be fully absorbed. This recipe, for home preparation, can be halved. The quantity is a bit large. The commercial version has a little baking powder added. Well, actually, for our home preparation, this can be omitted. Here, the butter does not need to be whipped to a white state. Right? It's also to give it a bit of crispiness. Because the original version also has a bit of crispiness. Moreover, you can replace some of the egg yolks in the recipe with egg whites. Then the overall crispiness of the cookies will be even better. Of course, you can adjust this. Then add the browned butter part. When making cookies, you should pay attention to the room temperature. If the room temperature is above 30 degrees, the butter can easily become overly soft. Over-softening can cause the cookies you make later to become oily. So this point, we need to pay attention to. In fact, I suggest that after making this cookie, you seal it for storage, and wait a day or 2 before eating. This way, the overall flavor will develop. The texture right out of the oven is really not the best. Sift in 152 grams of cake flour, and 38 grams of almond flour. Mix gently. You will find that the dough is slightly soft. That's exactly the texture. Using a piping bag. Remember the size of the mold or baking tray. I will also provide you with that on the screen. There's another detail, which is to pipe the batter as close to the bottom of the mold as possible. I will show you a comparison shortly, and then you will understand why I ask you to do it this way. After piping, refrigerate for 15 minutes. Take it out and flatten the surface. This step is also essential. Don't skip it. Even now, many private bakeries are still making this. This version sells quite well too. It's truly a very good product. It's easy to make, right? And it's also not easy to mess up. As long as you pay attention to the details, you can easily replicate it at home. The oven used today is the Chandi Cat Little Easy Pro. Bake at 180 degrees with both top and bottom heat for 35 minutes. Like this one, made with unsalted butter. You can use a spatula to lift the cookies out. The lacy edge on the whole cookie isn't quite enough. Made with whipped butter. They are very soft after baking. We need to change the way we remove them from the mold. Use a cooling rack to invert them. There's also another version. I changed to a different mold. It's not the type with a slope. When you pipe it in, the bottom shouldn't touch the mold. After removing from the mold, it will leave gaps at the bottom. This will affect the appearance of the cookies. And what you pipe in is what you'll get. What comes out of the oven will be the same. So you must ensure the surface is smooth before proceeding to bake. Each cookie in the original version weighs about 22 grams. If you want to get close to the original thickness, the amount of batter you squeeze in Should be controlled at around 26 grams. The amount I'm squeezing in here is 30 grams for one. The whole cookie that comes out will have a bit of thickness. There's also a thicker version you can make. The baking time remains the same. Let's break it open for a comparison. Like this one made without whipped butter. You need to use a bit of force to break it. It does have some crispiness. It is also flaky. The overall flavor is very fragrant. The version made with browned butter is incredibly flaky as a whole. You can also call it butter peach crisp. Finally, this thicker one. The center part is not fully cooked. The edges are crispy, but the middle is quite moist. So if you're making this thick version, you must extend the baking time. Thickness can be achieved, but it must be baked through. Click on my profile homepage. There are many practical baking tutorials waiting for you to check out.